What's the significance of the Olympics to a country in general, and especially to France at the moment?
The Olympic bid was meant to represent the return of France to a position of stability. And of course, it's not just in 2015, but the years following it also brought a series of security and social difficulties in France, even just symbolic events such as the fire of the Notre Dame Cathedral. According to the original plan, the cathedral was supposed to be repaired by 2024 to coincide with the Olympics. Now it will be in 2025. So even the Macron presidency, which started in 2017, has sort of taken up the mantle of using the Olympics to signal to the world that France is back to a position of stability and order.
Interesting choice by Emmanuel Macron to do the snap elections so close to this quite monumentous event as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it was an interesting gamble by Macron. The political situation now in France is one of quite kind of obvious uncertainty, in the sense that none of the three major parliamentary components can have the numbers to create a government, and none of the three want to really ally with each other. At the moment, Macron faces some really huge pressures to form a government, and Macron has called for a political truce during the Olympics, but it's not really clear if that will really go ahead. Of course, lots of people on the left and on the right don't really like that idea of waiting a month to figure out what will happen next.
There's obviously a cycle in the Olympics of the sort of high-risk zones and then lower risk zones. And talk to me a little bit more about what you think those big high risk areas are, or higher risk areas are.
Speaking of particular hotspots, there are two essential measures. One is spatial, the other one is temporal. In terms of spatial hotspots, there are of course the Olympic venues, but in particular also the areas around the Olympics venues where security is a bit less tight. And also there are all the fan zones, and we've seen some of these sabotage actions and some of the cyber attacks targeting those fan zones. And in terms of temporal hotspots, of course the closing ceremony is now going to be the next really high threat area, but also other events such as the marathon, because of course it's going to take place throughout central Paris. There are many different measures and aspects that we can use to assess different levels of risk in the coming days.
What are the other areas that you think could be either sort of an asymmetric threat or different types of risk areas? Are there any other areas apart from those two?
One of the factors that we're looking at is possible drivers of disorders or unrests or any type of disruptions, and generally speaking any type of threat, really. And so there are many different drivers that exist outside of France, and that French authorities really have no control on, or very little control on. And so we're looking at those. Of course, there are some important domestic drivers of possible unrest and risk. These obviously include the current political situation in France. Any sort of political update or development can drive unrest or violence or sabotage or any type of disruption that may affect the Olympics.
Have we seen any of political statements from athletes or other during the time?
Yes, but that is pretty normal. I mean, at the Olympics, it's of course the Olympic Committee has in its guidelines that the Olympics should not be used to make political or religious statements. But it's kind of virtually impossible considering the nature of the event itself. So yes, there have been many statements, many political statements. Most of those have been overly orderly, and they haven't resulted in any major disruptions. Of course, there are some areas of concerns due to the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. There are more serious security threats facing events where Israeli athletes or delegations are participating.